One. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure. Oh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. We're going to start the Economic Development Committee work session. Today, we have another very interesting session about an overview of economic development grants in Montgomery County. As you may remember, last year, we had a similar session right before the budget, and I think we all found that it was very useful to have this discussion ahead of the upcoming budget to see how or where each of the grants are. It just helped with us being prepared and to give recommendations to the county executive ahead of him releasing his budget, okay? This is us being proactive and working in partnership. That's just how I see it here. So we're gonna divide the agenda in 3 sections pretty much. For the first one, we're gonna talk about the economic development grants for businesses and investors. And we're gonna have, first we're gonna talk about the Jobs Initiative and then the Economic Development Fund. We're gonna stop there and ask committee members for questions, because if I wait until the end of the whole session, it's gonna be way too much, okay? Which is what we usually do, but that doesn't work for this particular one. So we're gonna pause after the MOVE discussion to take care of all the jobs and MOVE. Then we're gonna start up again on the Economic Development Fund Grant and Loan Program. And then we're gonna pause when we get to the micro lending, ask questions, have a conversation. And then finally, we're gonna talk about the economic development grants for providers of business support services. And we'll go through those items, pause, ask questions, and then that's it. With that, yes?
Sure. Just real quick, just want to let you know that there is a GEO committee session at 10:30 or so that I will need to go to, so.
Okay. Ooh, so I don't.
You run your meeting.
Okay, okay.
I'll stay as long as I can.
Okay, and I see that Council Member Lorian Sells is on the Zoom. So all of us are here, and we might lose somebody. We are going to lose somebody at 10:30. So we're going to start with Council staff. If you can please kick us off. And then, but before you do, because we're going to start with the Jobs Initiative, I do want to recognize the county executives team, in particular, Mr. Ken, Harman Espada, Judy Costello, Nadia, Dennis, and the MCEDC, who are sitting in the back for all your work on this huge initiative. So with that, can you please kick us off?
Thank you. Good morning, and merry final ECON session of the year.
Nice.
We'll just get started here. The chair ran through the agenda. It's here in the slides, and I just have some slides to go through the packet because the packet is very boring to read otherwise. Starting with the economic development grants for businesses and investors, the county provides these primarily through the EDF. There's 2 sort of distinctions between the EDF. There's first the Jobs Initiative, which is administered through the EDF, but is its own program. You will remember last year, for using FY24 undesignated general fund reserves, the council approved $20 million in one-time funding for this program that created 3 funds. We'll go into more detail about it, but as you can see in the table, there's still a considerable amount of unspent balance in there, driven primarily by the Job Creation Fund and the Founders Fund, whereas the Technology Innovation Fund is encumbered and will be dispersed to businesses. So starting with the Job Creation Fund, it is a by right program. Eligible companies must hire at least 5 jobs with a base annual salary of $100,000. The companies must be in a strategic industry, and companies can receive $10,000 per job or up to $12,000 if they are in a certain part of the county. And they can receive up to $500,000 in awards. As you've been updated several times by county executive staff, they've noted, even when the program was being discussed, that it would take some time for the money to be dispersed because there's verification periods, there's the period just to allow the companies to hire their eligible jobs. And a previous estimate was 6 to 18 months from the submission of an application to the disbursement of the funding. And it's likely that that timeline will increase given some additional delays or additional time that finance is giving applicants to make their eligible hiring given changes to the economy and economic uncertainty. So far, however, there have been 31 applications received. They are proposing to create 339 jobs, which is associated with $3.5 million of encumbered awards that would be dispersed after the verification is complete and the hiring is complete. And this averages more or less $10,000 per job. And then there was also some marketing analytics that you can see on the bottom of the slide here. Then moving on to the Technology Innovation Fund, again, the committee has been briefed on this, but this was a discretionary fund where it took in applications, worked with a third-party expert to review those applications. The program provides funding for commercialization and product development projects at early-stage high-tech companies with a maximum award of $200,000. They reviewed those applications. The money is encumbered to 47 awardees. I think 50 have been approved. And half the money has been dispersed, and the other half will be dispersed when the projects they're supporting are complete. So that program is moving forward. The Founders Fund went through a similar process, very similar programs, discretionary, takes in applications to provide funding for commercialization and product development projects, but focused more on small businesses with a maximum award of $100,000. It was a similar process to review the applications and approve them. In this case, only 8 out of 36 applications were approved. Finance can speak more to this. Again, this was discussed previously, but some of the reasons were just mistakes in the application, not being in good standing with the state of Maryland, being outside of funding minimums and maximums required by the program, not being in target industries, et cetera. So far, of the projects that have been approved, $400,000 has been dispersed, $800,000 has been encumbered. So there's a question, I think, here about whether they will be considering another round of applications. I think that was discussed previously. There was some discussion also of utilizing some of the fund balance to support some of the small businesses in this program. So you may want an update for that. But there is a $2.2 million fund balance in the Founders Fund as well. So that's the jobs initiative. Moving on, we also have economic development grants for businesses that come out of the Economic Development Fund. The largest of these programs is the EDF GLP, or the Grant and Loan Program, as well as the MOVE program. Both of those, the MOVE program had a large budget, which we'll discuss, but is already run out of funds. And you can see the overall balance within the Economic Development Fund. Sometimes finance does move money around to support programs with the overall fund balance. But as you can see, based on what's encumbered and projected for additional spending so far, there's not going to be a fund balance left to FY26. No. So just to start with the MOVE program, this is a by-right program also that provides financial support for businesses signing their first commercial office lease or expanding their existing commercial office lease for the first time. There are tiered awards depending on the amount of space that you lease, between $8 to $15 per square foot, with maximum awards of $80,000 to $150,000. And these were some of the changes that the council passed last year to increase eligibility to expanding businesses and increasing that maximum award as well. In FY26, this past budget year, the annual allocation for MOVE was increased for the first time from $750,000 to $1.65 million. And just recently in November, the council approved a one-time increase of $500,000 as part of the larger public service support package. So the program size for FY26 is $2.15 billion, only $1.65 is ongoing. This table shows a summary of some data related to MOVE. Starting from FY18. And you can see, starting in the left-hand column, that the number of new applications is increasing. So while the program did expand eligibility or increase eligibility to expanding businesses, the number of new businesses applying for the program has also ticked up. You can also see that the number of businesses receiving the maximum award, which is now higher than it used to be, is ticking up as well for such awards in 2024, 2025, and 26 to date. And the lease space is also increasing commensurate with the fact that there are more applicants in applying for the program as well. And you can see how the funding has increased and divided by the program. And you can see how it's exceeded already in FY26 the allocation that the council approved. Looking at the data more closely, there's a few reasons for why the funding has already been encumbered or dispersed and there isn't any left, and that's just, again, like I said, the changes have increased the pool of eligibility so more businesses can apply. They can receive more money per square foot. They can receive more maximum awards. And in fact, we've seen that more companies have been eligible for those maximum awards than previously. And but more importantly, I think there's also probably been an increased awareness of the program. That's evidenced by the fact that there are more new businesses applying. And there was probably some attention drawn to the program through some of the changes last year. And just thinking about the mechanics of the program with the low barrier to entry, it's unlikely that in previous years where the funding wasn't maximized that people were just leaving money on the table. In fact, it might be interesting to ask why the money wasn't maximized in those years. But generally, as we can see, and certainly in the past few years, MOVE is oversubscribed because there's a lot of demand. There's potentially a lot of eligible businesses. You can see the fiscal state of the program, the table here. $1.6 million has been encumbered or dispersed. Pending in this case is applications that have been submitted through the portal that would be otherwise approved, but for which there is no funding. And half of that, or 500,000 of that, has been approved through the one-time package, but there's still about $600,000 worth of awards that could be made, and that's not accounting for other applications that could potentially apply for the program, although there is a note on the website saying the funding has run out for the year. So really, one of the questions for the MOVE program that the council and the committee will grapple with and has grappled with is what's the right funding level for this program? And it's difficult to estimate. There are a lot of different factors potentially. MOVE activity as a portion of office leasing activity is probably too small to draw inferences. So it's hard to say that given the amount of square footage supported by the MOVE program, that represents all potential eligible businesses applying for the program. So it's hard to necessarily project out that data to estimate what the maximum universe of applicants could be. But even with a better understanding of all the potential eligible applicants, I think it's an open question about, is it the intention of the program to support every eligible lease, every new and expanding business in the county? So that's just a general thought there. Funding can't really be based on office market conditions either because vacancy continues to tick up. With the relatively small amount of square footage in the larger sea of leasing activity in the county, it's a relatively small piece to actually make a meaningful impact on office market conditions. And of course, office market conditions are changing through much bigger structural changes to the office market, but also the economy. So if you're thinking about what is the right level of funding MOVE, there are some considerations you could use to hone in on that number. It may be hard to precisely reach one, but certainly the needs of new and expanding businesses that apply is a consideration. What is the return on investment for the county for the amount of money that you support for this program? And also in terms of the overall economic development spend, I think roughly $50 million is indicated in the budget. What is the right portion to be supporting new and expanding office leases? Those are ways to maybe get to this answer. At the request of the Economic Development Chair, Council staff did assess the possibility of utilizing unspent balance from the Job Creation Fund, which we saw earlier. The suggested legislative approach would be amending Resolution 2049-491, which created the Jobs Initiative, because that really locks in funding for the Jobs Initiative. And so you can amend it to say the funding or a certain amount of the funding could be diverted to other programs in the EDF. But any use of jobs funding would be a one-time allocation to anywhere else in the EDF, and neither the executive nor the council can legally commit to replenishing any reallocated funding. So even if there was a general agreement that jobs funding that was diverted would be replenished, it would still compete generally with other enhancements to the budget as part of that council's process that fiscal year. So, and there are other considerations as well we just wanted to point out as you sort of consider this possibility, because the programs are different. First of all, the Job Creation Fund has a very high barrier of entry, and as we discussed, it is a bit of a slow burn by design. It's sort of an incentive to help attract businesses that take a long time to think about moving here, multiple years, so that the awareness and the predictability of that funding is a factor that they're considering. It also may potentially reduce the amount of funding available for businesses in strategic industries, because right now they can get a package. They can get the MOVE program. They can also get up to $500,000 from jobs. So potentially lowering the funding from jobs could lower the maximum award for some businesses in strategic industries. And fundamentally, they're just different programs targeting different industry sectors. Jobs has a very clear focus on strategic industries. That's also one of the reasons that it's slower to move. But those businesses are intended, or ostensibly have an outsized economic impact in terms of the high-paying jobs, their contribution to the GDP, compared to just generally all businesses that are either new or expanding. And so if you do divert funding, because MOVE is quicker to award, easier to be approved for, it's possible that it could absorb a lot of that funding. And I just wanted to point out also, looking at MOVE data, just the types of industries that it goes to, which is really catch-all. There are strategic industries here, but you can see that most of the awards are going just sort of generally to businesses in office space, not necessarily in strategic industries, which would make sense. There are more such businesses, which is why strategic businesses and strategic industries have an outsized impact, right? So here's the data just sort of showing that, not in any sensible order, unfortunately. But there it is. So summary of next steps, the committee can evaluate a maximum funding level. You could consider a supplemental in FY26 as well, or sort of recommend a level for FY27 and beyond. Noted a few factors you could consider. And then you can also sort of determine whether it should receive that supplemental in FY26 and what the source of funding should be, and I'll pause there.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Mr. Ali. I thank the county executives team at the beginning, but also want to thank you, because as we were putting this work session together, I asked staff to ensure and analyze any single possibility, so we are prepared to have this discussion today, especially any ideas that colleagues or even the county executive may have had. It was important to put it on paper so we can all be clear, and that's what you did, and I want to thank you for that, being so detailed. Before I open it up for questions and even comments, I have quite a few ideas. I would like to have the county executive to please present and respond to some of the comments that Mr. Ali already addressed, so we can move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll rely on the very talented staff up here to help fill in the gaps. But I just wanted to start with a thank you to the committee and to the council staff for the work that went into this packet, and for your fantastic support, because we are here to execute the programs that you fund. And we are all in to execute the jobs grants, the MOVE grants, everything under the Economic Development Fund that supports innovators, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and working alongside our partners at MCEDC. This is all about attracting jobs to Montgomery County, and which is especially needed at this time in history. We do want to talk to you about all the great things we're doing. I know we have some information about MOVE, and to update from council staff's update to you. There is no longer a message on the MOVE webpage saying there's no funding. Thank you so much for the $500,000 that you appropriated. We are working with MCEDC on the right messaging, because it doesn't matter if there's funding or not. We still receive applications, and it's on us to review those applications. When funding becomes available, then we can move forward, the applications we receive and execute. Anyone who applies under the MOVE grant, the funding is paid out at occupancy. So in many cases, there's a long lead time between application and when the check actually goes out. But I just want to assure you that we're working tirelessly. There's a great deal of work has gone into all of these grants, especially the jobs program, the innovation grant, as you know, has been something that we share It's a high priority for us in the executive branch, because these innovation grants, as we've discussed before, help move companies through what's called the valley of death, where they have an idea, but they're looking for funding, and a grant from the government can help prime the pump and get their concepts to market, and get additional financing that they need to move forward. And this goes hand in glove with the work we're doing with our innovation ecosystem. And just a quick aside, we are in the middle of interviews now for the incubator operator, which will be such an important partner to all of us in county government and at MCEDC in providing that much needed, not only operation, but support for us about where our effort should be placed on innovation and supporting entrepreneurs. But with that, I can turn it to Dennis Hetman next, and for any other specific replies to council staff.
Good morning, Dennis Hetman, Department of Finance. So we kind of have a mantra in our revenue forecasting estimates that it's better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. So what we are trying to arrive at here is the approximately right amount for move. The rest of our EDF GLP is structured in a way where they're fungible. We can move money amongst different priorities and do it when the timing effects arise. With these new funds, the 20 million, we can't. So that is why we're here to discuss the potential options, and we're simply trying to leverage the most multiplied good out of the budget that we get, honed to the demand and supply, and that's our goal. We try to do it mathematically, but sometimes the timing doesn't work out, and that's our status today.
And any recommendations in terms of the MOVE program? How much money are you thinking we should have in the coming budget? What are you thinking, based on the numbers that we just received?
So while we greatly appreciate the $500,000 that was appropriated, I think our thinking to fully get through this fiscal year, we needed a total resources, we need an additional $1.5 million based on the number of applications that we already have, and we're not even halfway through the fiscal year. It is a very popular program. You know, I've heard from property management companies and brokers who tell me this is vital. When they go and recruit companies to move into office space, they always tell them about this program, which might be explaining some of the uptick in popularity. So that's where we are for the remainder of this fiscal year. We anticipate a need for an additional $1.5 million. We know the executive is still finalizing the CIP, which is due to you on January 15th, and then he'll move on to the operating budget in January, which is when we'll have a conversation with him about what staff feels should be in his recommended budget.
Perfect. I'm gonna start us off with a couple of questions and comments, and then I'm gonna open it up to committee members. The MOVE program and jobs, very different, right? I think, and just to make it in very simple terms, and one of the reasons why the MOVE program is so popular nowadays is because this committee pretty much refreshed the program and expanded the program, and all the media hits that we recently made on this program really increased the awareness of the program, and which is a great thing. But I think, starting with the MOVE then, I am concerned in the fact that I don't think as a county we can afford just to say yes to every single application that we get for the MOVE, because then it will come so expensive. Believe me, if we were in a different financial situation, I would say yes, we should approve every single one, but it's not realistic, and I don't want to set up these grown expectations, especially as you put together the operating budget proposal that you just mentioned. If you ask me right now, in this very second, how much money should the county executive be proposing, I think it would be crazy to say anything beyond $2 million, honestly. and I'm pushing it just because I know the needs that we have, not just here, but in so many other different departments based on what's happening at the federal level. So I'm just gonna be upfront right now. And I also saying this as council president, looking ahead of what's coming and what things we're gonna have to start cutting. So I don't wanna have these huge expectations when the reality doesn't meet those expectations. So that's number one. The other thing that I feel about the MOVE program, which is amazing, at the end of the day, it also serves as a marketing tool for the county. We are marketing and telling everybody that we're open for business and we have programs to support businesses to move to Montgomery County and expand in Montgomery County, and that's great. But it doesn't attach, and then this is my way to get to jobs, it doesn't connect to how many employees are we getting to move, right? It doesn't do that. And so, yeah, it's great, but we also need to be real about what it is and the expectations that we should give. So I'm just gonna leave it there. So that's with that. Then on jobs, I think it's amazing what it has accomplished so far. Just looking at the number of people that we're hiring, and you know the success that it has had so far. And this is a baby still; it's a brand new program. And I do think, and again, I want to thank council staff for getting through all these different ideas about how to fund MOVE and keep funding jobs. I think they're two different programs, and we need to keep them separate because they both have different goals. See, that's how I'm seeing it. So on the jobs initiatives, I do look forward to seeing another work session like this one, probably in the summer. Why? Because since we're still getting applications coming in, especially with MOVE, I am interested in seeing how companies who are applying for MOVE and are applying for jobs, what's the relation there, and how many employees, how many people are these companies hiring, taking advantage also of the MOVE Act, of the MOVE program. So, but I don't know, it's too soon to get that data. So maybe the summer or the fall, you tell me when you think you're ready, we can have that conversation because it will show the success of all these programs coming together and how they support each other. I think that's the way we should be seeing them. And then the last thing I will mention, or ask actually, regarding jobs in the Founders Fund, you mentioned that there were some applications that were not granted. What's the follow-up? If I'm a company and I'm applying, and you mentioned that some of them, their applications were not complete, they had some mistakes, they were not in good standing with the state, like simple things. How can we help? How are we helping those businesses to get to the level that one day when they reapplied, they can get to a yes? You're gonna be able to get into, to be granted this money, because these are the small businesses that need the most help, right? So that, and then I do wanna hear from you on that aspect, but also, and this is under the procurement department, I think that connects a lot with them. So maybe in a session, we're gonna have to have the procurement department here, because I wanna understand how they're helping really small businesses, and it really links to everything that I'm just telling you right now. What's the connection of making sure that the small businesses that are getting the denials, how are we offering the technical assistance that connects to the incubator conversation that I'm not gonna discuss right now, but it's all connected. And that's why I think procurement needs to be here at some point. And perhaps, because again, it's about uplifting those businesses that haven't received grants from the county. Sometimes we have, and this is me with my small business background, when I had a company, when I was a business owner, and I left my company when I became a council member, I had countries, and a lot of people have no idea because they see me as Natalie, the former member of the planning board. They have no clue that I had a highly successful business at the same time, which was my full-time job. Planning board was only my part-time gig. I had contracts with the state. I had contracts with the city of Alexandria. I had contracts across the nation. And it was really hard to get, especially government contracts. So I know how hard it is to get somebody, especially the government, to grant a contract for a small business. So sometimes we as government, we're releasing these big contracts without thinking. Sometimes when you have an RFP that is so big, the small company cannot apply because they don't have the past performance, right? So sometimes it makes sense to break them down so the little guy can be able to apply and be granted and have the past performance in their business portfolio so we can help them grow. So I do need to have that conversation, perhaps in the summer and fall, and I need procurement to be sitting right there. Do you follow what I'm telling you, Ken?
I do, and thank you, Council President. I will advise Director Shetty to be ready, and I'm sorry.
Very ready.
I don't have his facts and figures on small business contracting. I know he puts out a report that I think he's recently shared with the council.
Yes.
But your remarks about the Founders Fund, I think our hope is to have another round. We haven't scheduled it yet. We have talked about lessons learned and had at least one conversation with one of our small business support services contractors, because as you said, it's all connected. And maybe a second round, it would involve first meeting with one of our either Women's Business Center or Small Business Development Center, LADC, anyone who we have, just to triage where they are in their lifespan as a company and what to give them I guess to help them clear that first hurdle and submit an application. So that's something we've started to talk about, and certainly that we would factor into another round, because there is funding in the Founders Fund, and we do find that remaining 2.2 million should be redeployed for the businesses that they're intended to. And I'd like to, if I'd like to put my colleague Judy Costello on the spot, and maybe Nadia and Dennis if they have anything to add on this.
Sure, and congratulations, Madam President. On the reasons that, one related to the Technology and Founders Fund, in March we presented a PowerPoint which has the top 5 reasons why companies were ineligible. And particularly for the Founders Fund, we actually would need to change the funding opportunity to make most of these companies eligible. Because they were focused, that funding was focused and targeted towards certified minority businesses or those in a CEI disadvantaged area, even the most broad definition, slightly disadvantaged. Number 1 and 2 reasons why they were denied is that they were not certified minority, which could be improved. That's a state process. It's takes a year, or they were not located in a disadvantaged area. And through our attorneys, those were the only 2 ways we could target businesses from historically underrepresented communities. The second thing is, for both of the funds, we focused on companies developing technology. A government contractor like your former business would probably not have qualified, because these were focused on developing proprietary technology. For founders, we said you didn't need a patent, we'll help you get a patent, but the majority of companies who applied were not developing technology. And then we also had a number of founders companies who didn't have full-time employees and who were under the funding minimum. And so that we didn't use up the $2 million by spreading it across with businesses who were not already operational. That's the reason that finance decided to set those thresholds. And so I do think we can coach the companies in advance. We have promised that we will meet with them, the Business Center and some of our small business resource support entities. We are sharing that list with them, and we will be sharing the list, actually we have now, but we've not yet announced who it is. So MCEDC will be focused on target industries. So there's support that we can provide, but I wanted to manage the expectation that it's not just coaching companies, and therefore the $2 million will be deployed. If we keep that same criteria, we'd have many of the same issues.
We, as part of that outreach and follow-up and triage with the companies, we are meeting with our third-party expert physically today. They're in Rockville. We're going to have a kickoff meeting as to the second half of technology innovation and getting a status report on each of those, in addition to founders too. So that's going to be integrated as part of that work, and it's part of the scope of what they plan to handle.
Okay. Councilmember Malcolm. You can use this one.
Yeah, thanks. This over here is busy. Thank you for this, and it's a great update. It's so much easier to have these updates when we're not in budget. So we'll have the same discussion during budget, but it's just a different focus and a different intensity, so I appreciate it. So I agree with the Council President in terms of the jobs fund versus the MOVE fund. They're two very distinct targets, and I would like to see them remain separate and not move the funding, because I do think that it's a longer term strategy, and I think we need to have stability in how much funding we have there. So I agree with that. And that also touches on this discussion about the Founders Fund. That also is a very specific target area. And I still believe that target should remain. I think that it's part of the broader issue of making sure that entrepreneurs get these certifications that they can have, should have, and deserve to have. And I think that's just it's a big lift to educate someone who's just starting a business with so many other things on their list and so many easier things on their list. So maybe the education process and so many different entities, when we talk about the no wrong door, so many different agencies and entities touch entrepreneurs at different times. And so I do think that let's work on this education piece very early on when we talk to entrepreneurs about what is your list of things to do. Very early in that list is to look at what certifications are they eligible for and how long that process is and can they get started. And I know that there's some things that have to happen before they can do that, but if they wait until there's an opportunity, that time frame doesn't work because it just takes so long to get that certification. So I think that that's important, and that's an educational piece, which is hard. And then for the MOVE program, so that's difficult to determine, what is the right amount of funding for the MOVE program. And I think I'm thrilled that it's highly successful. That's what we wanted. And I think there's a difficulty in it being oversubscribed, in that at some point we do have to tell people no. And then does that mean that the people who get it are the people who are in the know and can get in at the right time and know how to work the system, which is always a problem when we have grants available, of who gets to know about the grants. And I also think that the question of the effectiveness of the program, the if not for question, if not for this grant, would this company not move to Montgomery County? And so I think that when we look at the metric of the company, and that's hard to explain. Of course, the they are going to say, we need this money and we can't move without it. Their broker's going to say they need the money, they can't move in without it. But I think I think that assessment is a little bit more nuanced. And so I don't have an answer to that, but I do think that that's the critical metric, is this the money that put them over the top for the decision to expand or move here? So how we can figure that out, I think, is important. And then we haven't even talked about, we had a work session on retail and restaurant space, and how can we provide support for those industries? And I know that it's so difficult, and again, when we talk about very specific targets, the move, it was very specifically targeted on commercial office space, which is very important, but something that the committee needs to think about is what legislatively can happen for retail and restaurants in that regard. So those are my thoughts for today, and as we start thinking about the budget.
Thank you so much, and we're gonna have a retail follow-up in January. So this is great, because we're gonna talk about it then. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate this committee session, definitely following up, and very much appreciate the thoughtful comments of my colleagues. And one of the things I appreciate about this committee and the members of it is the data-driven approach, right? We've been asking questions, we've been diving into the various programs we have across the board, asking what's been working, what's not been working, and it is exactly how we came upon the rationale for expanding the MOVE program. It was diving deep, figuring out how to help the sectors that need assistance in this moment in time. And the question that we've wrestled with was how much funding goes into that. And so let's talk about the MOVE program. The MOVE program was undersubscribed, and we asked, why is it undersubscribed? And we updated the parameters for the participation. And what actually happened is we updated a program that hadn't been updated in 20 years, and now it is so oversubscribed that we have a good problem on our hands. The data is telling me that the program is working. And so I would be hesitant to cut off a program that our own team in front of us has told us is the most cost-effective economic development tool that we have. You're nodding, yeah? Yeah. The most cost-effective economic development tool we have. We should not be stopping it. We should be continuing to support it. That's what data-driven decisions do. And at the same time, when the jobs program was conceived, they were some programs that already existed and some new programs, and a dollar amount was assigned. And we are now seeing years later, 3 budget cycles later, that is undersubscribed. So just like we approached MOVE, we need to ask the same questions. Why is it undersubscribed? Some people think it's undersubscribed because of executive function. Some people think it's undersubscribed because there's lack of information about it. Some people think it's undersubscribed because the amount of money that was originally allocated was just too high. It was pie in the sky thinking, because these programs hadn't necessarily existed. And all 3 could be right depending on with whom you speak. I understand that. But our job is to figure out what the right amount is, because any money that's going to any of these programs or any money that's being kept in a bank account is money that's not going elsewhere. And so I do think that we should look up at the jobs program about the original allocations that were made that might have been too high, too optimistic. because we're now 3 budget cycles in. And that money is literally sitting in a bank account when we have data-proven, data-driven programs that need assistance. And so I'd rather not keep something in a lockbox, but actually give it to the community, give it to our business owners, and get it out there working, because that program is working.
Thank you so much. I look forward to what the what's his name? The county executive will be proposing on this. I see Councilmember Lorian Sells.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for the presentation and updates. I would agree. I am very pleased to see the excitement around the MOVE Act and know that there was, a need to even increase funds to meet the number of subscribers who were awarded funds. I do know that I did receive quite a few comments from some businesses that were unable to receive funds and confused about some of the specifications around being awarded those funds. And so I would love to talk with you about ways that we can improve outreach and engagement around this particular fund after this round of allocations are exhausted. I did want to talk about this first report that we are reviewing regarding the jobs initiative. I made the amendment about the request for reporting and the need to include pretty specific language around who would be receiving $20 million of taxpayer dollars. We already talked about during this particular session how, the largest fund was going to corporations that were going to be providing, 6-figure jobs. So my request around the report asked for information about how we were going to be, marketing this program, what outreach we engaged in. I don't see any of that included in this report. I don't see a breakdown of which businesses specifically are receiving the funds. I see zero information about demographic reporting, no information on which applicants are from community equity index disadvantaged areas, and nothing on the Economic Development Corporation's administrative costs associated with awarding these funds, or even engaging with the business community to let them know that these funds are available and how they would be disseminated. This was one of the requirements that we as, the committee approved this amendment through that lens and that understanding. And I know that the MCEDC was going through a lot of shifts and changes with leadership, but to receive this report, it seems pretty disingenuous on what was expected. So I don't know who can speak to this report and whether or not there's an addendum that we may be missing from the report, but what happened to the information? Because I'm just very confused by what I'm seeing on page 29.
Page 29 is...
That's just the memo from the county executive.
the quarterly report?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and I can let finance speak to this, but they have been submitting the quarterly reports. They tend to look like the one that's attached in the packet, which is the most up-to-date one that we have. I can let them confirm that the metrics required for the reporting are included in this. I don't know if the MCEDC spend towards marketing was required, but if so, I don't know if you have that information.
Sure. The quarterly progress report is intended to be a snapshot in time of where we stand on the lift that is across all of these programs. Through the course of that, we are aggregating every imaginable data metric that we can. That's also going to be part of our meeting with our third-party consultant this afternoon to ensure that. But our focus has been on, as efficiently as possible, getting the funds to these companies that it is owed to. And there is data analytics with respect to the marketing outreach that I do think is part of that. If you want these bolstered in any way, we can take a look at that, but it has been part of our process throughout.
There's no demographic data. That specifically is nowhere in this packet about the demographics of who's receiving $20 million, $10 million of taxpayer dollars. This was the largest fund, and that was a specific request in the resolution amendment. So how is that data going to be captured on the people who are going to be awarded these funds and the people that you are outreaching to share about this particular fund? Which chambers did you engage with? Which meetings did you have in the community to talk about this fund?
With the Department of Finance. So at this point, Finance has dispersed 50% of the award to all of the grantees in the Founders Fund and the Technology Innovation Fund, and we are working on a press.
I'm not asking about that fund. I'm asking about the $10 million fund.
So with the job creation
Those
fund,
had specific designations for who would get that money. The smallest one was for the small, funds for micro grants for, minority businesses. I'm not talking about those funds.
Across the jobs initiative, we are announcing awardees after agreements have been signed, and we're working through agreements with our first tranche of folks that are eligible for their first payment under the Job Creation Fund. Once we have agreements signed, we'll be publicly releasing information, names of the companies, and at that point, we'll be able to share more on demographics.
Okay. And when can we expect that? At the next quarterly report, or?
When the actual conditions are met by the company, each individual company has a unique time frame as to when they need to hold the jobs. Some of those, we've also expanded that time frame for the full hiring to be 2 years. So that will be part of this to complete it. But in terms of the snapshot that we can provide on a quarterly basis, it's just where are we with anticipated funding? These aren't done deals yet.
Okay, I just thought that if we are saying that almost half of the fund is already spent down, that we would be able to communicate specifics on demographics, even without discussing which businesses, and be able to say it's in this zip code. These are the demographics of the businesses. These are the jobs. We know that these are connected with specific jobs, and any job application that I've ever filled out asks me for my demographics. So I don't know what is being requested by MCEDC from these businesses to provide this information that's barring you from being able to share that information without disclosing the specific name of the business.
Councilmember Sales, this is Ken Hartman Espada. We'll definitely circle back, make sure that whatever information we have is in your hands, that we have on demographics of the companies and owners that we're working with. We'll put that together. It may not be in this specific progress report, but we can.
Well, that was what the amendment called for, to be included in the quarterly reports, who we are getting these jobs for. Companies are getting this money because they are providing jobs. And when they provide jobs, they request demographic information. So how are you accounting for these jobs and awarding these businesses with this money, or even putting this money on hold without requesting specific information about who's getting these jobs.
Well, we certainly have that information. Of the 3 odd million that's been allocated from the jobs grant, this is the grant where it's $10,000 per job.
Yes,
$12,000
I know.
per job in an equity area. We certainly have that information, and we'll get back to you quickly, and we'll include it in future reports.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Lorian Sells. Before we move on, I have Councilmember Glass has a question.
My question was somewhat asked, and it was about the list of applicants. I understand and appreciate the response that the money has, in some instances, has not been dispersed because it's still in process. But I would request that we get an updated list of everything that already has been dispersed, if we can do that for our review. Because again, as we take a data-driven approach, or as I would like to take a data-driven approach, it's important to see what has been dispersed already. If there's a way for us to get some insight into what has already, what is in process, I think that is helpful as much as it informs the next budgetary decision, recognizing that it probably should be confidential because it's still in process. But again, for a budgetary decision-making process, we should have as much information as possible.
Great request. Councilmember Balkan.
Thank you. Just to clarify that at this point, there's no funds have been dispersed on the Jobs Act. That's correct. So when the funding is dispersed, we'll get that data. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. And then just going back, I meant to ask this question when we talked about the move. So the process of encumbering, like oversubscribing. So right now we have a deficit of the roughly 600,000 given the supplemental that we just approved. So how does that happen where we encumber more money than is allocated for the move?
The MOVE program requires us to accept applications. There's not a cutoff that occurs. So when the funding runs, and it's all in the act, it's all in the law, it is based on funds available. We still have to receive applications and review them. And it has happened in past years where and just this year too, where we have more applications than funding. When July 1 rolls around and there's available funding, then those who qualify from the previous year will get their funding. There is some triaging that we've been doing this year with those who are eligible and have qualified applications based on when they need the money, because not everyone's moving tomorrow. And in fact, there are a few applicants who are moving after July 1. So we know that, and we can triage that and manage expectations with applicants. But for us, as we did, the messaging is critical, as we did put out that message that there were no funds available, and we heard back from people in the community, in the business community, that that was the wrong messaging. So we've since revamped the messaging. We made sure we're on the same page. MCDC and Business Center are saying the same things to applicants, and we're communicating with those companies that we're dealing with. If MCDC has started a conversation, they should have the conversation with them on the status, and likewise with the Business Center. But we have had companies who have said, okay, we understand that funding may be limited, but can you at least tell us that we qualify, and so that we know that we can expect the money one day.
So, thank you. So we're going to get into a situation that, depending on how much is oversubscribed, that we're going to lap a year, and we're going to be starting on 2028. And so, at some point, there has to be a conversation about do we stop application? Because I think that for instance, you mentioned at the beginning that we're 600K oversubscribed now, and we're not even finished with the year. And so I do think that I understand that we don't want to cut people off in terms of where we are, if they're eligible, but at some point it's going to get, we're going to be out in the future where no one's getting money anytime soon. And so I think that that's something we need to consider, how the fund is operated.
And Council Vice President, I'm tracking with you. We are completely in agreement. I think there's a more fundamental question that we'll get into maybe in the budget of the fungibility of the Economic Development Fund, because you're right. When there are programs set up with a firewall in a fund that's supposed to be fungible, we're unable to make those mid-year adjustments without coming back for appropriation.
All right, thank you.
Just quickly to that point, and that was intentionally why the EDF GLP was set up the way that it was, where you could, if a larger deal transpires, we can be nimble and agile and address it and get it done. That flexibility is not inherent in these new monies. So we are bound to the constraints of each of the three appropriations, and it's essentially impossible to get the supply and demand perfectly aligned when you have the amount of timing effects we have at play. So we're just doing the best that we can on that front. But it may be something to consider to enable that same flexibility in these new monies.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Glass.
I appreciate what you just noted. We're talking about Jobs Act, we're talking about a local economy, and what we're doing here in December is actually our mid-annual review. We're talking about how our programs are operating so that we can get them right during the budget and assign proper valuations and allocations, and as was just noted, see if we need to tweak some of the parameters. I think that it should all be on the table. And I think what is happening is folks are wedded to an idea that just might not be working exactly as it was prescribed. And that's not just a theory, that is the proof of what the applications are and the fact that 3 budget cycles in, monies have not been dispersed. The intentions are good. I supported it. It just needs to be refined. That's what this conversation is about. And if we're having a data-driven conversation, the MOVE Act, the MOVE program is working. Business in our community want it. They called saying they were upset when it was overprescribed. And then we have other pockets of funding that people aren't applying for. And yes, it is important to determine what those communication channels are, which we've had that conversation, I think, for 1.5 years already about that. And we can keep going to different groups, and we can keep having our navigators go out, and we can have the county executive travel around the world talking about these opportunities. And if people are still not subscribing and applying, then we need a course correction. Aspirational hoping that people apply for it is not a strategy. But what we know is working is something that we should double down and triple down on. Our focus should be on data-driven approaches. All of these are important. It's just fine-tuning them, as was noted. And if something isn't working, we need to fine-tune it. With that, I have to go to Geo. I appreciate this conversation. I know it will continue, and I look forward to the information about the applications so that we can continue this deep dive. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. I'm looking at the clock, and I really need to wrap this up by 11:30, so let's focus. The next item is the Economic Development Fund Grant and Loan Program, which is a discretionary program. So, Mr. Ali?
Yeah, thank you. If I may just provide one additional piece of information to Councilmember Sales' question. While make sure to work with county executive team to get all the data that's available when the quarterly reports are published. Just to note, though, I wonder if it's possible to note which ones have applied for awards from community CEI areas, because I think that's already in the data. For example, the average is slightly over 10,000, which suggests there are a couple of companies applying for the job creation front from CEI disadvantaged areas, and so maybe that's some indication you can provide in reports going forward. So,
Thank you. I'll follow up below.
sure, thank you. Anyway, moving on to the next big program in the EDF, that's the EDF GLP, as the chair mentioned. It's a discretionary program. These are discrete awards where MCEDC typically sources the awards, working with the companies to figure out what the need is, comes up with specific agreements, and these are funded with the fungible balance that Mr. Hetman describes. To date, the EDF GLP is supporting awards totaling just under $1.2 million across 4 projects. These include 2 corporate headquarter relocations within Montgomery County and leasing for 2 companies in strategic industries. And these deals are going to result in a total of 50 jobs. We also have the Biotech Investor Incentive Program. This is an entitlement program for investors who make qualified investments in county-based biotech businesses. It provides a cash grant to investors who receive the state tax credit. The council allocated $125,000 for this program, but there have been no disbursements or encumbrances to date. SBIR STTR Local Matching Grant Program. This is a program that provides a match for programs that are supported through SBIR STTR or doing that kind of work. And the county, in fact, had increased the eligibility of SBIR STTR a few years ago to allow for companies in medicine, biotech, and life sciences to be eligible for the match as well. And there was also an update in Executive Regulation 223 to allow for some support for Phase 0 grants where you're supporting reimbursement of technical assistance costs and things like that. Critically, while the council approved $200,000 for this program, the program did sunset on July 1st. And so the committee may wish for an update about when there will be legislation to authorize the program or whether there will be any changes.
It'll be on your desk before the end of the month, Council President, for introduction in January. This is legislation to remove the sunset on the SBIR.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And sorry, then just moving on, there's also the microloan program. Sorry, this has been, I don't know if it's been encumbered. These are awarded en masse to the 2 providers that hand out the loans to individual businesses. We don't have the data so far for this year for the actual microloans. I think those also come with a significant amount of demographic data that would be interesting to explore. So at the request of the committee, we're happy to prepare another briefing where we do a deep dive.
Are there any comments from the county executives team on this? No? This one for me is very straightforward. Any questions? Hearing none, we are going to move on. Go ahead.
All right, so now we're at the sort of second half of the conversation, economic development grants for providers of business support services. And I want to clarify, the term grants was sort of the umbrella term used for this committee. These are non-competitive contracts, and there is a technical distinction between that and grants, but the point being these are non-competitive awards, and that's what we'll be discussing. So the county has historically provided contracts to providers of business support services, coaching, networking events, cohort training, things like that have been provided by these service providers. And these have historically been awarded on a non-competitive basis, and different contractors have different contracts with varying levels of specificity about what they're supposed to be doing. The Small Business Support Services NDA, which you all review every year, consolidates most of these contracts, but not all of them. And the SBSSC NDA is managed by the Business Center team, which focuses on small businesses in the county. I'm going to draw your attention to the figure on the page here, which sort of shows that the slight confusion in the review structure for some contracts, because there are 4 economic development non-competitive contracts funded and managed through CEX, but not the Business Center team, and those contracts are outside of the purview of the Economic Development Committee. This is a very detailed table. We don't have to dwell on it, but the point being that it shows for all the organizations receiving non-competitive awards for these small business support services, how much they've received over the past 3 fiscal years, what they're approved to receive in FY26. the first year in Section G as well, and also the source of the funding. So you can see 7 out of the 11 contracts are funded through the SBSS NDA, 4 out of the 11 are funded via appropriations to the Office of the County Executive, and there's also some unspent balance in 4 contracts that were not awarded new funding in FY26. And I'm happy to return to this slide as needed during the discussion. As you all know, as there's been multiple discussions this year about it, the county executive staff have unveiled a new process or have suggested that going forward, all non-competitive awards for small business support services will be solicited competitively. Of the amount that was allocated this year, $300,000 will be used to pilot that competitive process, and another or $150,000, another $150,000 will be used for business support services for federal contractors, specifically just meeting the issue in this moment. But the expectation is that all business support services will be contracted through the SBSS NDA going forward, and will be awarded competitively. That is what has been communicated.
And can I just pause? I'm sorry, I try not to ever interrupt. But that is something that this committee has been requesting since we created this committee. From the very first day, each contract that we have in Montgomery County needs to be competitive, period. That's it.
Only one more slide anyway. So, because it's going to be a new process, the budget level should sort of be justified as a new program, sort of building it up to a certain dollar amount, because it's not going to be an increase from this year. So I'm not unsure what that amount is, but looking forward to receiving that level of information for the SBSS NDA. There are some outstanding questions you may consider asking, like, will the 4 economic development contracts funded through CEX also be expected to be funded through the SBSS NDA, or will some of them continue to be managed and funded by CEX? Also,
I'm going to pause again. I'm so sorry.
Oh, please. Sorry.
We need to talk about that because the county executive should not have any special programs. It all should be going through the same channels. That's called transparency. That's called accountability. So I need to hear from the county executive what's going to happen there. But you haven't finished. Have you finished?
Not almost. 2 more bullets.
Go ahead, do it.
It was just other suggested questions, like what type of services are they looking for? Because at least one of the contracts within CEX, the Purple Line Corridor Coalition, seems to be more of a partnership, not necessarily services. So how will that be funded if it needs to be funded going forward? And what are the types of businesses that are intended to be supported? Because as we know, the Business Center focuses on small businesses, MCEDC focuses on strategic industries and international businesses. There's at least one contract that ostensibly provides international business support. So is that something that would be solicited through the new process as well? These are questions.
My turn. Thank you so much, Council President, for setting me up. The county executive is in alignment with you and the committee on the need to have a process where services are assessed through an open solicitation. Nadia Clute is here and can talk more about those solicitations, but we are, we have not received any proposals yet for next year. We do appreciate your feedback, but at this point, our intent is to use the open solicitations for all of these business-serving contracts to come through the open solicitation process, and including the 4 that remain outside of the Small Business Support Services NDA.
Good morning, council members. Nadia Clute, Business Center Manager for the record. So we have taken the time over the last 6 months to review all of the contracts under the Small Business Support Services, as well as what we're managing under the county executive. So we are recommending, and have been in agreement with you, to transition from the current non-competitive contract to an open solicitation model for the most part, for a wide variety of providers that provide business support services, which will include, training, coaching, legal assistance, accounting support, and general technical assistance. This shift, we have identified that it is necessary because we want to have more equity, more efficiency, and effectiveness over the programs that the county offers to support the economic development of local small businesses within the portfolio that the Business Center oversees, which is professional services, food industry-related businesses, as well as retail. So some of the assessment that we have done, it is that there is limited competition in the sense that our current contractors have been designated to receive these contracts on a yearly basis based on a community grant program or on a special appropriation. Other organizations, and even the chambers of commerce have reached out to us and said, we would like to be able to provide support services, so through being able to now move to an open solicitation model that would not only open for the same organizations that currently provide business support services, but also give the opportunity to other organizations locally that are providing business support that have not received funding directly under the Small Business Support Service NDA. We have also identified that some of these organizations tend to advertise the opportunities primarily to their own members. So we wanted, through this open solicitation, it will be more of a general public advertising, and many business, have shared that they are completely unaware of some of the organizations, some of the training, some of the programs. We have also identified that some of the businesses have been a little bit hesitated on attending and taking advantage of the support that some of the organizations offer. Some of them have to do because, they might not be woman-owned. Some of them might not be part of the Black community. So they want to be able to take advantage of all of their resources, and they feel like they might not be able to. At the same time, we have identified that some organizations might not have the capacity to take full advantage of all the funding that we have been able to give them over the period of time. So, and that reduces and is a disadvantage for a lot of the businesses and organizations that could have received some sort of training support cohort and that hasn't happened. Through this model of the open solicitation through the first year of service, there will be a 3% increase, which that has been happened with the previous model, but during the second year of the open solicitation of providing services, all of these organizations will be eligible to receive the 3% increase. This would also prevent, as you guys know, when we looked last year over at the funding, that some of organizations had a lot of funding left by the time we provided a report between March and April to you. And then there was a rush of overloading, the services and the events and the training between May and June, so that they can utilize. The way that this model works is that we will have more control out of how we plan on distributing the funds. So the funds that we would discuss with you for budgetary purposes to allocate will be equally divided into 4 quarters. So then there is not this rush of service at the last quarter that they would be have to provide a bunch of training that business owners can get overwhelmed by receiving a lot of information throughout. Some of the benefits through this open solicitation, it is to increase access and opportunity to more organizations to partner up with the county, including those that might have been excluded previously. It will help us also to do a broader business outreach through different contracts. We have also identified that in the App County area, a lot of these service providers don't cover. So through this open model, we would be able to put certain minimum requirements that they would have to spread the service across the 5 different regions within the county. And still, we plan on ensuring that there is a targeted programming. The programs that have been effective and supported through the previous model, we still want to support. We have been getting reports, and through the open solicitation, we will remain on requesting reports and surveys and data to identify the efficiency of the program. As part of this open solicitation, we also plan on put in a business service committee that is going to be reviewing all the applications that we receive. So then that way the decision is not only on myself. I also want to involve the regional service centers directors because they do play a vital role as to they have a better understanding as to what services their community within their specific region needs. Through this open solicitation, there is also a rotating model, so not one organization have to get all of the exact same scope of service. It's the fact that we can say these 5 organizations can provide cohort training. This is the order that we will proceed, so then that is more of an even model. The open solicitation will be open until we determine to close it, so it is the fact that there is not an expiration day. So some organizations at some point could present a proposal, could submit, could be qualified. So how it works is that we pre-vet all of these organizations. We identify the different services that they could provide. We put them on a list for a rotating basis. And then we provide task orders on a quarterly basis for them to complete and fulfill a wide variety of services. So then as the climate change, as an example, with the federal contractors and what happened, we were kind of limited with the current way that the contracts are structured to make any changes. But through this model, if any economic development action was to happen, that we can quickly adjust the shift as to where we need to allocate more services, more support. So getting into the open solicitation. There are 3 open solicitations that we plan on putting out there. One is going to be more of for the business cohort and training program, which is going to be for topic-specific, industry-specific. It would include training sessions, coaching, and networking. And all of this will be set. The county provides a fixed cost as to what these organizations can charge. That also allow us to, while we have reviewed all the contracts of the different organizations, to have pricing be more consistent. So through the open solicitation, we will say, this is how much an organization can charge for a cohort. This is how much an organization can charge on an hourly rate for consulting service, for training, for legal assistance, for one-on-one training or presentations. The second open solicitation would be within the business assistance services. We still need coaching, consulting, technical assistance, but we have also heard that there is a need for accounting, marketing, and legal assistance. So that would allow us to vet a wide variety of consultants, of service providers, of...
Isn't that part of the incubators program too that we're working on? How's that connected with all that?
So the incubator program, the incubator RFP includes coaching for technology-driven innovation.
Yeah, so they will focus on their industries. We are focusing on the industries that are part of.
And I'm assuming, like, somewhere in your website, I mean, it's a lot, and it's all great, but it has to be, where can I go? Is my type of business the type that should go here or should go there? Where should I apply? Because it's a lot, but sometimes it's that we have all these amazing programs, but we don't know how to market them, and it's confusing.
Yes, and I will get right to that. Again, we will still have an open solicitation for standalone business training because that's what the organizations currently have been providing, and it has been effective. Last but not least, we will be putting an RFP out for a business center annual conference. We are aware that different organizations have hosted some sort of conference. However, the male audience, if the Women's Business Center is hosting, a conference, they might not attend. What we're trying to do through this conference is to bring all of the different resource partners to one location. It is to be able to market it county-wide to one place, to have business support service organizations to provide couple hours of a conference where business can either learn about how to start a business, the different resources the county has available, the fact that all of the resource partners from the county will be there at one place.
Sounds great, but as long as all these different nonprofits that have been doing this work for a while, you already mentioned the Women's Business Center. I can think of the Minority Business Conference is coming up, I think it's next week. As long as they're partners, and being partners doesn't mean a name on a flyer. It means giving them funds so they can activate their membership so they can show up. Is that included? Because otherwise it's going to fail.
Yes, so the plan of this business conference has more to do with business owners are not aware of all of the resource partners, all of the resource organizations that are available to support their business. We want to have them all in one place. And then with that being said, it's also more of a county-wide conference, not necessarily a specific.
Okay, let me reframe the question. I understood that. How are you engaging the local chambers, the local groups who have been doing this work already and already have a local group of people that they connect to, and people feel that trust already? How are you including them? Because it shouldn't just be a name on a flyer. What's going to be the partnership?
I hear you, Council President, and one of the things we've been driving through all our partners and all of our programs is partnership. This particular RFP needs to be a true partnership between, and we will encourage our whoever wins this, that maybe that could be a requirement, that there are partnerships with the other groups that already exist, because that's how you get the word out, through the chambers, through the nonprofit partners, and their people on their database, as well as the Business Center and MCDC.
Thank you. And then last but not least, which was mentioned during the last council session, that we are proposing a new program that is called Business Launch Support, which mainly what that would allow is for us to provide direct support to businesses that want to be part of a chamber of commerce but might not have the funds to join and receive, be part of having a ribbon cutting ceremony. There is like a marketing aspect to what the chambers provide. So that is something that we are exploring at this point. I foresee in the next couple of weeks to meet with all of the chambers to identify some of their membership structure, and this way we're focusing on, again, supporting the local small businesses in Montgomery County.
Councilmember Balcom.
So great. I love everything about this, and I think it's really important that in terms of the grant process and the vetting process, right? So people come to us all the time saying, where do I get money for a business, or where do I get funding? So nonprofits, how do I get into the system? And and I list out the ways, except for we have this funny little thing over here, right? And that doesn't go through the process. So I think that it's really important, and we've talked about it through the years from this committee. So I'm really thrilled that we're going to move forward with this solicitation. And sounds great, the business support, that we can look at what the business community needs. And I just think that just like everything that we do, we just have to make sure that when this is ready to roll out, that the communication is far and wide, because what's going to happen is that the same businesses who are already in the system will have will get the jump on it, and then by the time some entities find out about it, the process is already done. So I think it's just really important. And I love that you're engaging the regional services centers. I think that that's a way to look at the geographic distribution. And when we think about business support, our regional services centers do such a fantastic job. They're the ones that have really direct relationships with some of these businesses. And so I really appreciate that. And I look forward to engaging in that.
Is there any other comments from the county executives team? No? Well, actually, I have a question. Sorry. Are you saying where is everything that you just mentioned going to be located in terms of a website? Under the Business Center page, or?
So the open solicitation will be marketed through the Office of Procurement, and it will be listed under the open solicitation section. At the same time, we have been discussing, number one, with our current organizations, with the Maryland Black Chamber, the Maryland Small Business Development Center, that this was upcoming, so they are aware as to the changes that we're making. We also have a standing meeting with the local chambers on a monthly basis, so they are aware. And then we will utilize the county executive newsletter, as well as we will work with MCEDC, you guys as a council member, to help us push the message out about this open solicitation.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Council President and Council Vice President, and Councilmember Sales, who I know is online, for your support for all these programs. I hope we're moving in the right direction. I know there's still fine tuning to be had, and I appreciate all of your feedback to make sure that we land where we all want to get to.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the partnership. And I do believe that we're moving towards the right direction. And with that, 11:02, we did awesome. We are adjourned.